Unlocking momentum is about people, not the technology. The technology can be the catalyst to make some of that happen. And so what we're doing is we're trying to give folks the opportunity to work with new things, but also give them the opportunity to learn new skills and prepare them for our ultimate future state.
If you're ready to unlock momentum, you're in the right place. I'm Aaron Kopel, the Momentum Locksmith, and this is where CIOs come to grow. Welcome to another episode of Unlocking Momentum. Very excited for our guest today, Steven Barley, who I've known for many years here in Indiana. He's the Chief Information and Technology Officer for Indiana Public Retirement System, or known as INPRS by many of us here around Indianapolis. But he's been there for a little while and actually grew into the IT role from a different area. So I'm curious to hear more about that. Steven, I'd love to hear more about your background as sort of how you came into this role and came into now. So yeah.
Thank you, Aaron. Appreciate you having me. So I've been at INPRS now for about 20 years, and not originally from Indianapolis. I'm actually originally from Jacksonville, Florida, born and raised, and lived in Nashville, Tennessee with my family for about 4.5 years. And then we moved up here, took a job at the time was Public Employee Retirement Fund, PERF. And then about 2010, 2011, they merged into what is today is INPRS. So a little bit about my background. Interestingly enough, I've only been in the CITO role for about 4 or 5 years. Prior to that, I was the Chief Operating Officer for about 14 years, and then a little bit as the Director of Benefits for about a year when I started. And prior to that, it's all been operations, call center, back office, project management. So I didn't grow up in the IT role. I always had a fascination with it. And a lot of my work dealt with working with folks from IT, but I never really kind of went to the field. And then, I would say probably about 7, 8 years ago, I started to really think about what I wanted to do and wanted to kind of get into IT. Wasn't sure how to do it just because where I was at and how do I make that leap. And it just so happened my predecessor just, kind of helped me out. He kind of groomed me into the role and was really kind of showing me the ins and outs of IT to a degree. Didn't really get a lot in the technical piece, but enough to know that the information and the experience that I could bring from operations, I could bring to IT. You don't have to have necessarily that background in order to make it happen. And interestingly enough, I had a conversation with one of our representatives at an organization we get the research from. And I said, what type of IT background do I need? What kind of certifications do I need and whatnot? And the guy looked at me and he said, you know what? You don't need that. He goes, that's not what you're here for. You're here to help them build the strategy. And, it really set me on that path to say, you know what? I don't need to get the certifications. I don't need to understand the details. That will come with time. And so when I started, I looked at my staff and I said, look, I get it. Don't have the IT background. I'm not here to tell you how to do the technical piece. So we'll make a deal. You teach me the technical, I'll teach you the strategy. And we've been doing that ever since. It's been a good arrangement. So I get to learn a lot from my staff. I get to learn a lot from having peers, working with you, Aaron, and meeting different people, really kind of understanding how does the technology world work. And I've been able to share with others, here's how operations works. And here's how you can marry up operations with IT, understanding the business value and the business need, and then what type of technology can be part of that. And then on top of that, really looking at, people, right? How do you bring two groups of people that talk two different languages together to really kind of reshape how we look at our organization? So I see that the blending of operations and IT has worked out quite well, not perfect, but it's worked out pretty well. So I like to look at the operations and the IT group as one, and I try to bring them together as much as I can. And if I can share with them how the value that can really be driven from understanding how each group has a conversation and talks and solves problems, but quite frankly, it'll be just unstoppable. So that's kind of a quick background of how I came to be where I'm at.
That's great. And it's it's such a challenge oftentimes, people that have grown up in IT as, developers and sort of grew up in that career path. It's hard sometimes to really put themselves in the shoes of the business side and really empathize there. And so you're coming from that side. So you've already got that. And then, just partnering up on the technology side of it and relying on your people in a good way as a leader, right? To be able to help set vision and strategy and then let them really bring that expertise. That's great. Yeah. It's nice marriage made in heaven kind of thing there. So that's great.
It has been so far.
Yeah, that's great. Well, you're really interesting to hear about that journey and coming from the operations side, bringing that together with IT and bigger picture, thinking about that journey and what you've learned throughout your career. If you were to look back and give your younger self a piece of advice, what might you tell your younger self to help them along and help that young man along the journey?
Yeah. So I'll tell you, knowing what I know now, I would tell my younger self to broaden out my horizons and knowledge base. I was very focused on the operations. I was doing a lot of deep diving into that, and rightfully so, right? That was my responsibility. But what I think I failed to do is really embrace the fact that there's advantages to learning other things and making it and broaden your scope of understanding. If I had the chance to go back, I would probably study more in the technology field, not necessarily have gone into it, but at least had a better understanding of it sooner rather than later. I think a bit of the struggle has been that understanding it probably at a dangerous level. And now where I'm at, that leap was a little bit harder to make. Probably could have been a little bit smoother if I had taken the time and studied a bit on the technology side to kind of keep up with it so that when I made that transition, it would have been a little bit easier. But I would probably say that, and I tell folks that today, when I look at individuals and they say, well, where can I go and things, conferences or visit other businesses, I tell them, look, don't just hone in on your industry. Look outside of that. Go to a retail place, go to logistics place, go to the airport, something, because what ends up happening is you can see how they run their business. You can see how they run their operations, how they're using technology, and you can glean from that things that you can bring back. So it doesn't always have to be pension related or finance related. Telling myself that I should have been broader in my knowledge base, I actually use that today to tell folks do the same thing. I had a individual I kind of provided that advice for, and this individual read a book on how to build a deck on the back of their house. And it was so interesting is because the individual came back to work and actually applied the lessons learned from doing that to their job. Time management, cost management. So it was fascinating, again, to see that you could take information from other industries, other fields, and apply them to yours. So it doesn't always have to be pensions or manufacturing or retail. And so it's really kind of, looking at the broader scope of things and what you can learn outside of what you're used to doing every day.
That's really great. That's good advice. I wish I had some of that advice myself, but it is those tangential kind of things where you get out of your own head, because if it's so close to your own industry or what you do already today, you notice just the little things. You don't notice the big things that are more applicable sometimes. So, across different industries, different businesses, different functional areas, things like that. So, yeah, and I know you make it out to a lot of conferences and meet a lot of people in other businesses, other areas, other industries, other parts of the world. And I'm sure you learn a lot from that. So that's great.
Oh, yeah. That level of engagement is probably one of the best reasons to go to some of these, is just to sit down, over a cup of coffee or breakfast or whatnot, and just listen to people, listen to their challenges, listen to how they solve them, listen to what's kind of really on their mind. And you kind of take it in, you build good relationships. I like the idea of just being able to pick up the phone and call somebody in a different industry and say, I'm having this problem. And getting their perspective, because they're not jaded from it, right? They don't deal with what we deal with on a daily basis. So hearing that individual's perspective really kind of, sheds some light on opportunities that could otherwise be missed.
Yeah, for sure. That's great. Well, speaking of that, as you go out and visit conferences and things across the country, across the world, I know there's some that it's really good content. There's a lot of professional speakers and things like that. There are others where you just find interesting people. I'm not sure if those are the same one, but if you could suggest to people, what's a good one to go meet new, interesting people that maybe aren't the speakers, but they're in the industry, they're in the trenches doing the work, where would that be?
Yeah. So, I'll tell you, the conferences I really go to a lot just by kind of default. I do go a lot of the Gartner conferences and meet a lot of individuals there. There are ones that could be local to Indianapolis as well. So when I look at the conferences I go to or whatnot, I try to keep it open. I try to do what I can locally. I think it's important to build the local network. Having the nationwide or the global one's nice. And when you go to the bigger conferences, that really kind of happens. But if I had to provide advice, what I would say is look at what is available here, or even just within the Midwest, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be in Indianapolis, maybe Chicago or whatnot. But being able to be fairly local and talking to folks, different industries if possible, is great. So none come to really mind as specific. I try to, as they come along, I try to see if it's something that is of a topic that's of interest. I think that's important. I've got to get something out of it. And I think it just usually just happens by just the natural way of, meeting people, right? I mean, you're in this room, you're all strangers, and you just strike up a conversation. And I think you can do that anywhere, really. And so I think that those are the kinds of things that you just take advantage of. I'm typically an introvert, so I'm not one that goes out and puts myself out there. But I think it's important that, like myself, I have to overcome that. If I want to be able to build relationships with individuals, if I want to be able to build that network, I have to be able to overcome that. And I would tell somebody who's maybe in my seat and, uncomfortable with it, strike up a conversation and see where it goes. And the big thing is asking questions and ask follow-up questions. Get the other individual to talk a lot because they do want to most likely share what's going on in their mind. And then things start to fall into place. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I don't think if you don't try, you're never going to know. And I think that's one of the things that I've learned. I had an executive coach once tell me, you're never going to know unless you ask. And that was such a profound statement she made to me. And she was right. And now I just ask. And yeah, some are yeses and some are no's, but at least I'm making the effort on there. So I think you could do it at any venue and just make sure that you're just making an effort to make some of those connections.
Yeah, that's great. And just natural curiosity, right? Being able to ask some of those questions out of genuine curiosity, like how are things going for you? And I can imagine, especially if you're in a similar role, with someone who's head of IT or CIO, there's something we joke about sometimes called shared suffering, right? So just sharing those challenges you have and hearing if they have the same ones, so you feel like you're not alone, right?
Well, and a lot of individuals will be more than willing, especially if they have ideas and opportunities to share them with you. And so if you could strike that conversation up, kind of get to that, kind of build that camaraderie, a lot of people will just say, hey, I can help you out. I can give you some advice. I can tell you some of the pitfalls that we encountered in something similar. I find that most people are willing to do that. When I came into the IT world, I'll tell you, it was one of the best experiences I've had. It didn't matter who I spoke with at, whether it was at an event, a conference, a breakfast, everyone across the board has been such a great help and willingness to say, look, give me a call. I tell them my story. I tell them where I came from. They're like, you know what? Not a problem. Give me a call. And the community here around IT has been such a wonderful thing and so supportive. I can't speak enough of it, but it has truly helped me advance. And that's kind of where, when we talk about the tombstone, I want to be able to return that favor to others and help them be better as well. So yeah, you gotta take that chance.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I know you're part of several groups in Indianapolis as well that, some of those peer groups like SIM, Society for Information Management, a really good one, the CIO network here, Indiana CIO network. So I know those are really good peer groups to get people together and talking about those kind of topics as well. So
it's wonderful. Yes.
Good stuff. Well, that's great. I love hearing about the background and sort of the advice you give your younger self. It's good stuff. So as we move forward the conversation, thinking about our podcast, the name Unlocking Momentum. So really want to dig into that. I know you got some exciting things going on. I know you guys have been working on some really big projects, a handful of things all at the same time, because there's just so much stuff to do, of course, just like a lot of us in IT and large organizations, there's just a never ending backlog of things to do. So kind of curious what you've been up to lately and how you've been unlocking momentum to get things going.
Yeah, sure. So I'll tell you, I'll take a little bit of a step back. And so when I took over the role, kind of tying back into bringing the operations ideology into the IT world, I really sat down and I was looking at my staff, looked at what we did, and, you know, standard IT group, right? You know, you have business requirements and system requirements, and then you do it and you so on. And so I sat down with my staff and I said, you can be so much more. The value that you bring to the table is going to be tremendous. And if we can tie in business acumen along with that, you'll be unstoppable. And so what we did is we really shifted from the typical order taking type IT group to being strategic partners. And so that was our push, right? So we looked at our customers, the internal departments that we service. We're like, we're your strategic partner. We're going to help you solve your problems. We know and we can understand the problems because we're bringing that business knowledge to the table, and we're bringing the technology to the table. But we're also going to have the courage to tell you that technology may not be what you need. Maybe you just modify a process or eliminate something and you can achieve what you want faster and cheaper. And so part of it, that unlocking the momentum, was changing our mindset to not just be at the table and listening and taking notes and then say, okay, we're going to walk away and try to build something. No, get engaged, talk to people, understand what the problem is, understand how technology may or may not solve that problem, and have the courage to give them an open, honest answer. So I think the momentum piece had to change with our mindset. And so then moving forward, we are going through a modernization. We haven't modernized our systems or our customer service model for these 10 plus years. We did it 10 plus years ago. It was a very transactional based customer service model. This is how you got things done. There was no room for variation. It just fit. This is the only way you can get things done. And our systems were really built around that. And so we had built up a case for our board, and we presented to them and said, times are changing. And as a result, we have to change. And our systems that we put in 10 plus years ago, we've maxed them out. There's just no room for growth. You know, we could change things, but it'd be very timely and very expensive. And so what we did is we really kind of approached it in two ways. We said, that being said, let's put the technology aside. Let's focus on what's important. Important is the customer. It's the membership that we support. How can we change our customer service model, and why we should change our customer service model from a transaction base to an experience base? So when we talked about that, everyone was on board. Provide options, provide unique experiences, give our customers the choice. And so I said, okay, great. This is now what we need to do with our technology. And so when we kind of put it all together, it all kind of married up well. And they agreed and they said, move forward. We're implementing our first CRM system. Went live with our first phase back in September. We're working on our second phase, and we've got a few more after that. We're retiring some of our old tech debt, and we're implementing some new modern technology at the same time. So the reason I went back and talked about the strategic partnership was because we're bringing new technology to the organization that they haven't seen it before. Now, it's not bleeding edge. It's been around for a while, but it's newer than what we've had. So I've got a group that works closer with the business. They're really being that strategic partner, really trying to translate the business need and how do we do the new customer service model to the technology. Then I've got my technologists who are learning, okay, well, here's the new technology. Here's how we build it, configure it, and deploy it. So what we've done is we've given the organization an opportunity to see things completely differently. And so when we talk about unlock momentum, it is looking at our staff, giving them the authority to make decisions. It's giving them the authority to learn new things. And it's giving them the opportunity to see how things can be done differently. So we're very big into looking at what our current state is, what our future state is. And to give you an example, we've done skills matrix for our entire IT department. That, okay, for each job and each level, here are the skills that are needed. But what we've also done is identified our future state. And we've then also done a skills matrix, if you will, on all of our future state needs. And so now what we've done is we've shared it with our staff and said, okay, well, here's where you're at today. And based on the new skills, here's where you're going to need to be tomorrow. So that we can then start having discussions when the time is right. How do we start to upskill, and how do we execute that upskilling? So what's happening is we're becoming strategic partners, helping the business solve the problems by understanding their language, understanding how to translate that into technical solutions. We're looking at our technologists and saying, okay, now you get to learn new technology and use it and build it and deploy it. And then holistically, we're looking at everybody saying, now, here's where you're at today. Ultimately, we have to get, in the future, how do we get you where you need to be? And then we can start to have more direct conversations between the staff member and their supervisor or manager of what kind of classes do you need to take, courses, things of that nature, so that they become better than what they were. And what we do is preparing them for the future state. So I think unlocking momentum is about people, not the technology. The technology can be the catalyst to make some of that happen. And so what we're doing is we're trying to give folks the opportunity to work with new things, but also give them the opportunity to learn new skills and prepare them for our ultimate future state.
That's a really good point. And as you think about it, it's not just about the technology, and it's really about that partnership with the business to have that experience of where are we going together. Because it's not just an IT agenda, right? And then that could change when the business changes their mind. But if you're partnered with them, you probably have a better idea of generally the kind of things the kind of experience you're trying to create. And it's not about one specific technology maybe, but about that direction, so that we're prepared to adapt as the specific business needs change, but we've at least got a direction of where they want to go and what kind of experience they want to generate. That's great. Yeah, I hear a lot of companies that are that proactive and forward thinking about that specific issue about what kind of skills and capabilities do we need in the future for our technology team to be able to deliver better to the business. That's great. Yes. Well, speaking of that, I imagine AI is part of that picture, because how can it not be? As we go forward, I can imagine there's a lot of interest in digging into that, especially, for customer service and things like that, to optimize things and make things easier and better. And it's interesting because what we see a lot going on right now is people have gotten beyond that scary phase of, should I even try this stuff? Do I have permission to do these things? Now, a lot of places have permission, but they don't have intention. And so what we see a lot of times is everyone's grabbing a tool and running off into the woods, and they're all going different directions and pulling on different ends of the rope. And, no one's really pulling in the same direction, but they're having fun. And so I know that's a passionate topic for you. Kind of curious to hear more about your thoughts around that, being intentional about that kind of technology advancement, especially AI adoption.
Yeah. It's interesting is that we were slow out of the gate, if you will. And it actually, sort of kind of take a step back again. We knew at some point we were going to do AI. I think it was inevitable. So back about 4 some odd years ago, I met with the individual who was overseeing our data group, and I instructed her. I said, look, we need a whole data management strategy, and not just data integrity. We need the whole data strategy from beginning to end. And the reason why is we have two objectives. One, directly, that we need the information, the data, to provide the unique experiences, the new customer service model. Secondary to that, at some point, we'll get into AI. And not sure when, but it'll happen. So we spent 3-4 years really kind of building out our data foundation and building out our governance structure. So we wanted to build on top of that. We wanted it to be a nice, good, solid foundation versus kind of being shaky. So we didn't really do any AI or anything like that. We kind of put that to the side. And so what we've done is we built our full master data management program. We have built out our governance structure. We have built out our policies and procedures, all of our cataloging. We're implementing a data management strategy, an MDM strategy, if you will, to put that in place. So really we did all the preparation work. So now AI comes along. And there were a lot of folks who were reluctant to do anything with it and didn't want to touch it. And just, even though they knew it was coming, they didn't want to. So that we kind of stalled a little bit. But then I think what ended up happening was it was coming whether they liked it or not. And a lot of it was coming in through vendors, right? So a lot of the software we had, they were putting it in. And when you look at our policies, our procedures, our guidelines, there's approval processes. I mean, we've really kind of have that foundational framework for governance around AI. We started to have to do it. And then all of a sudden, people wanted it, kind of to your point. They wanted the tools. And so we realized that, look, we can't hold this back anymore, but we have to be intentional. We can't just roll things out. It's a risk. And not to mention the fact that you can roll it out and it go badly. And the people who didn't want it, who were reluctant to begin with, are just going to have more reason to be reluctant, especially when you want to do more of the complex things. So I think that part of it is making sure that you've got the right governance structure. And I'll tell you, one of my biggest concerns is that it's coming so fast that I'm afraid that the governance isn't going to keep up. Unlike SaaS applications or on-prem, different kinds of software where you look at it, you evaluate it, you do a POC, and then you buy it and you implement it, you're done, right? I mean, you still maintenance and things, but you're generally done. But AI doesn't stop. And then it keeps coming, and then the new tools keep coming, and everybody wants this, and everybody wants that. And you've got vendors implementing AI into their products. I'm afraid that it's it's really gonna cause the governance, at least our governance structure, to really start to feel a lot of pressure to be able to keep up. Because here, unlike, the software, right, it's, you put it in place, you got to keep monitoring it. You got to make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do, and it's not going, rogue on you. So the level of effort to administer your AI program is far different than it is a typical software application. And my fear is that the level of effort it takes, will you really have the strength within the organization to keep it going? Because once it goes bad, it can really have not only bad consequences, but it can really stall going forward with future efforts. So we're actually doing one very small. We're just implementing 3 agent force within a third-party agent force within Salesforce. Nothing fancy, but what we're doing is we're starting small. We are looking at these 3 little implementations, but what we're saying is let's do them right. Let's show the value that AI can bring to the table. Let's show those who are reluctant that we've got the right guardrails in place. We've got the right infrastructure in place. We know how to monitor, we know how to do it. So we build trust. And that's the key thing, is starting to build that layer of trust with those who want it and those who are reluctant about it or concerned, and show them that it's doable. And you do it with intention, right? And you do it with a real value that's being driven, not just to put something in place. So I think that the challenge with organizations is containing it and making sure that you're able to look at folks and say, no, know what you want, but either you can't get it now, or the reality is you may never get it. And I've had to tell folks at our work, no, we're not getting that. It's not because we don't want to. It's either maybe you don't understand the dynamics behind what you're asking for and the risk associated with it. You may not understand how it gets networked into the system, but goes back to that strategic partnership. But how can we help you? You've got a problem. How can we help you solve it? Doesn't have to be AI. So I think that doing it like you articulated, doing it with intention is so critical, but also making sure that with everything coming at us so fast and furious, that the governance can keep up with it, and making sure that the organization understands the level of effort it takes, not just to implement it, but how to monitor it on a going forward basis once it's implemented.
Yeah, that's a really good point about the business partnership, laying that foundation up front so that you can have those conversations. And when you need to say no, there's some rapport built there that you're not just saying no for fun. There's a reason behind it, and let's talk about it and make sure that we're on the same page. And we see a lot of times where, the business does come with solutions versus here's the problem I'm trying to solve. And to your point, there's other ways to solve it besides AI, of course. So
yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And, I'm kind of curious too, the other side of that coin with IT staff, IT team members, directors, managers, all those folks who are helping to find these solutions, put tools in place, and to your point, put up, some of the governance policies and things around it to make sure it works well. But I can imagine there's some aspect of they're looking at these things and saying, hey, that's starting to do part of my job. That's starting to step on my toes. What does that look like for you guys right now?
Yeah, so definitely a concern. As you start to look at the different tools that are out there, as you said, that, wow, that can do what I can do. We've been very straightforward with them. Our objective is not to look at replacement. Our objective is augmentation. This is no different than Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or whatnot. It's a tool. And what we're trying to do is trying to give you a tool that allows you to do your job better. I look at it in this way. There are certain tasks that computers, whether it's software or AI, that just do it better, right? But there are things that computers and AI can't do, and that's build relationships. And if we can find the technology that does those tasks that can be just repeated and let it do its thing and master it. You let people work directly with their customers, internal and external, build those relationships. That's not something AI can do. You're not going to go to a meeting and look at AI and say, okay, well, here's my problem, go find a solution. You're going to want to have someone across the table who's listening, who's asking questions. You're building that relationship. So if we can, and what we tell them, if we can get you to do that, give you more time to do that, we can move the needle farther than what we are today, and just let the AI stuff, let it do its thing, right? And so we're not looking to replace. What we're looking for is augmentation. How can we give you another tool that's available that's going to make you be better at what you're doing and let you maximize what you do best, and that's build relationships.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's, I think about this sometimes. Medical professionals, doctors, dentists, veterinarians, they go to school for all that technical kind of work, but they don't teach them how to run a business. Sometimes, same thing with IT, a lot of times. You go to school and you learn how to code and run networks and things like that, but the customer relationship building and trust building and all that kind of stuff is not something that's maybe front of mind until you get out, and then you start realizing that that's what it's all about, right?
Right. Yeah,
Cool.
absolutely. Absolutely. It's all about relationships.
Yeah. So to your point, AI is not going to take over that part of it, at least not in a good way right now. So it's,
Correct. Yeah, that is true.
Yeah. You can get agents maybe start to talk to each other, but that's not the same as the decision makers and people talking to each other, right? So, yeah, interesting. Well, I'll be curious to see, how things evolve out there in the world with that side of things as well. Because like that's a key component, that relationship building and really understanding not just, the business bringing you a solution to implement, but it's, hey, here's my problem and here's why it's important to me. Here's why it's a high priority or not, right? And be able to have that conversation because you built rapport and not just you at the C level. It's really like when I say buttoning the code down, where the VPs on each side are talking to each other and IT and business and directors and managers, and we're all sort of in alignment across those different levels of the organization to make sure that we're having the right conversations about the right things. So,
Right. Absolutely. I agree.
Super important there. Kind of curious. You talk about a lot of good stuff about relationship building, AI, and a lot of other things out there about technology modernization as well. But kind of curious for your thoughts on it. If you were to offer a big piece of advice for CIOs out there, what's the most important thing they should be paying attention to out there? I think about the future, a lot of times like 5 to 10 years from now, but with AI, it seems like the future is like 18 months max, but
Yeah. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
whatever that future is, like, what do you think is the biggest thing that CIOs should be paying attention to right now?
Yeah. I'll tell you, you always have to obviously stay up to speed on the technology. I would never say not that, but I would say that I think that where I see the biggest shift around CIOs is they're more important now than ever. And I see them being, they, again, have to know the technology, but I think that their role in technology is going to be as important as it is as a deeper enterprise leadership opportunity, in the fact that they're going to be looked at for all of the aspects of AI, right? How does it work? How can we use it? So on and so forth, because they're responsible for understanding how it works and how it can be integrated. And so to me, there are so many elements of AI implementation. What we talked about before, how do you deal with organizational change management with people thinking they're going to get replaced? The tool that, does it really solve a problem? Did you really identify? Is it really the right solution? To me, it's that enterprise leadership role is where you're really going to have to step back outside of the technology and say, okay, we've got a lot of powerful tools out there. We have a lot of hype that's being sold. A lot of, as they say, a lot of noise. To me, they've got to find a way to navigate that noise and find, as they say, the cliche, the signal, and help the enterprise understand what that is. I would say that, like myself, I go through conversations with individuals who see something on TV or read something and then they want, but not fully understanding what it does and how it works and how it can be integrated. And so to me, that's where the CIO takes a different role. He says, well, wait a second, let's step back. How can I be an enterprise leader and really kind of shape how the organization should be utilizing these new technologies or not, really being able to step up and say, no, that's not what we should be doing. So I think that the role is going to be broader. I think it's going to be more important. And I think it's going to be more challenging. You're going to have a lot of pressure, not only to know the technology, but to be able to tell folks no, to be able to identify which ones will really solve the problem, and then being able to lead at the enterprise level outside of technology and help the business understand how to articulate the solutions and what's available now that hasn't been available before. And so how do you bridge the technology and the business? And I think that's going to be more important than ever. And then the second thing to that, as we talked about, is upskilling your personally, professionally, but doing exactly the same thing for your staff. Looking at them saying and challenging them to say, well, you're going to need to learn more. You're going to have to learn different things. Doesn't matter if you like it or not. At the end of the day, things are changing. And the question is, are you going to be able to keep up? So I think that you're going to have to look at an enterprise leadership role. I think you're going to be challenged with the level of technology. I think they're going to be challenged with governance. I think they'll be challenged with being able to keep up with everything. And then on top of that, helping their staff be better for the future state. So a lot of pressure. And I think that's, they're going to have, step back, take a breath, and then look at really what that role is going to be in the future and how you can transition it from just technology to enterprise leadership and enhance your people skills, because there's going to be a lot more discussions, good and bad, that are going to take place that are really you're going to really have to understand the human dynamic with what's going on going forward. So I'd say it's a lot, but I would say that that's where the pressure is going to be.
I think you're spot on from all the conversations I hear out there, as well as that CIO role is the part where you're managing the IT department is starting to decline rapidly in favor of really becoming that strategic business partner and getting outside of IT and going out and proactively reaching out to those peers in the business to help them understand how to help themselves through the use of IT, rather than just be sending things over the wall or making requests for solutions be implemented. It's really, going out there and being that partner to them to help them think better about what they should even be asking for solutions for, or digging into what problems they have. And to your point, what we're seeing is one of the biggest challenges of the CIO being able to go out and do that is stabilize the IT organization, right? Through having strong leadership where your second and third in command kind of folks are stepping up and being strategic so that you can be, up one level as well. And that's one of the biggest challenges we're seeing out there, is like really bolstering that IT leadership team to be the guiding force for IT, so it doesn't have to be the CIO all the time. So,
yeah, I agree, 100%.
Yeah, well, common patterns we're seeing out there in the world. So I'd love to hear that being reinforced from real world situations out there as well. So that's great. Well, Steven, really appreciate having you on the show. This was a great conversation. So just to, summarize some of the key points here, I think the last thing we talked about, probably the most important thing being that, CIO really becoming that strategic business partner to the organization. And, with that, bolstering the IT leadership team, really helping to figure out the governance side of AI and being intentional about the adoption so that things don't go off the rails, right? That we're implementing solutions that are manageable and aren't going to get out of control as we implement new things. It's not that we want to, stop things or slow things down, but let's make sure we're doing things correctly, right? With good guide rails to make sure that we don't go out of control, and really think about the opportunities that exist out there to use a lot of those new technologies to help us help ourselves and build those new skills for your people and team, so that, I like how you differentiated task versus job. Like the jobs are still there, but some of the tasks will start being taken over by AI, but then the job gets elevated to be more strategic for all your people. So yeah, I love those aspects. So really appreciate you sharing all your insights. And I know people are going to love this episode and get a lot out of it. So kind of curious if people want to follow up with you and learn more or have a coffee with you. What's a good way for them to get in touch?
LinkedIn's probably a good way to reach out to me. I meet a number of folks over a cup of coffee. Get to, build those relationships, the networking. I'm happy to sit down with anyone and have a good conversation and share ideas. I think it's important now that, when the level of support I received when I moved into this role is probably going to be more important than ever across the board. Being able to talk to your peers and your colleagues and share the challenges and the opportunities is going to be now more important than ever. So LinkedIn's the best way. Reach out, send me a message. I'm happy to meet with anyone and build that relationship and have a good conversation.
That's great. I'm sure people appreciate that. So as we wrap up, anything else you'd like to share in terms of just books, resources, podcasts, anything else that you find interesting that you'd like to share with people?
Yeah. So there's a few books that I like. So there's a couple one individual, Simon Sinek. Love him. He's on YouTube, so you watch him, but he's got a couple books out that I like. Start with the Why was my first one I read from him, which was really good. Talks about more about the why versus the how and the what and how to build, inspire loyalty through that and long-term value. But the one book I liked of his the most was The Infinite Game. That was probably my favorite for him, only because he challenged the status quo and say, everybody's playing this game, this short game, and somebody set the rules that there's a beginning and an end. And he questions, well, who set the rules and why are you playing by them? So it really makes you start to think, am I doing something that in the short run or the long run? And am I really thinking long-term or short-term? So I enjoyed that. Another book that was good by Chris Voss. He was a former FBI hostage negotiator. Never Split the Difference was his book. He's also on YouTube. Watched him. And his book was interesting, right? And it talks about how a lot of it is how you negotiate. And the main thing is listen and ask questions. And his point was, don't give everything away when you're negotiating. Let the other person do a lot of the talking, because they will tell you so much, whether directly or indirectly. Before you start to really even negotiate, you really have to kind of build that rapport and get the trust so that they're willing to share with you all the things. And plus he goes through actual stories of his negotiations and which was fascinating just to kind of hear some of those. Podcast wise, I probably have way too many. I'm registered to way too many to listen to, but I do focus a lot on AI, different ones like AI Daily, things of that nature, leadership with that. And I have to every once in a while kind of go through and clean house, so to speak, because I've got too many that I can't listen to. But, a lot of times just, pick up a good book. I'm reading one now, Ingrain AI by John Munsell. I just started it, but I heard it was good. So giving that a try.
Yeah, that's great. Good stuff. And especially Chris Voss, I actually had a chance to see him speak live last fall, I think it was, and really entertaining speaker, but the stories are amazing. And, I like the point is really let the other person talk, because part of it is we make a lot of assumptions. And so if you let them talk and really try to understand their motivations and what they're going for, that helps negotiate and try to find a good mutually beneficial solution. So that's
absolutely.
Great book. And, Simon Sinek as well. I love that stuff. So thanks for sharing those. We'll make sure those go in the show notes. And once again, thanks, Steven. Really appreciate being on the show. It was great to hear your insights. And really, as we get to the end of the show here, one thing we do with all of our guests is some rapid fire questions. And so the first one of those is, what's your biggest passion outside of work?
One passion I've got, I share it with my wife, been married for 31 years, is traveling outside of the U.S. Love traveling around Europe. Been to a number of places, Ireland, United Kingdom, France, Germany, places like that. Studying the culture, the architecture, the history, and being able to tour different parts of Europe with my wife is probably my passion above anything else.
That's great. Any favorite spot?
That's tough. We like them all. I will say that a little bit of difference between myself and my wife likes the countryside. I like the cities. If I had to pick one, I'd probably pick Edinburgh as one of my favorite. So try to get back there whenever we can. But we usually split our trips up a little bit, a little fair. To be fair, we go to the countryside for her, go to the city for myself. So we make it a good joined trips.
That's great. Yeah. Edinburgh's, that's one place I've been there maybe for a day or two, a couple of years. I went before COVID, so it's been a while. But my kids were younger. They were, hiking around Arthur's Hill and all that, and really enjoyed it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun.
Lots of fun. That's great. So next question, our rapid fire question list here. If you could have a coffee chat with anyone, alive or dead, who would it be?
Yeah, I like to follow certain individuals just to understand who they are, how they were thinking, and some of the decisions they've made. And I'll tell you the one, if I had any opportunity, it would be to sit down with Steve Jobs and have a cup of coffee with him and really just talk about his life and really understand what his way of thinking was. I didn't know him personally, obviously. So I only know what I've read or seen in the movies and documentaries. And so looking at how his thinking was, of how he bridged technology and human nature and design, just to kind of get his understanding of how he led that together so that, what he created, the iPhone and whatnot. And I think that would be such a wonderful discussion to really kind of have that knowledge base. I mean, clearly he was a visionary and he's done a lot. Now, I won't say he's an angel. Some of the stuff I've read, he's pretty harsh, but that's part of the story, right? I mean, to really understand how his way of thinking was, how he pushed people, right, wrong, or different with the way he approached it, but just to understand that he was able to get people to do things beyond what they thought they could do is quite fascinating. And I think that, I'd love to hear from him to say, okay, if all the decisions you made, would you still stick by them today? If you were still around, and, what would you say to the company now? Is it where you would have thought it would have been? But I'll tell you, one of the greatest questions I think that I would love to ask him would be, knowing what's happening today with AI, if you were sitting in front of a room of CIOs, executives, what would you tell them? Yeah, how to handle it and what to do. I think that getting his perspective would be great.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are trying to guess where does this whole AI thing go in the next 3-5 years, even sooner than that. It's so moving so fast. But he's the kind of person you would think would have a pretty good guess, at least, on what that vision might look like for the future and what the possibilities are. So that's great.
Yeah.
And he's a super interesting guy to me as well. In our leadership classes, we use him as an example of sort of that evolution of leadership.
Yeah.
Going from that expert leader to achiever to catalyst, and sort of growing and becoming that visionary, and like you said, really trying to get the best out of people. So
yeah. He's a good person to study. I will say that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's a great one. I love it. So, all right. Well, last one here. We call this sort of the tombstone question. It's more about legacy. Like, what do you want to be remembered for? What would you want written on your tombstone? So
I'll tell you, I think that, and it goes back to what I think about from a leadership perspective. It's, not how many projects I ran and were part of, but if I had to put something on my tombstone, I'd want to know that I left helping people, supporting my family, helping people achieve what they want from a career standpoint, from a personal standpoint. When I think about leadership, leadership is so much more than just looking at the finances and the technology and what. It's really, how do you develop somebody to be better than themselves, which is one of the reasons I had talked about wanting to have coffee with Steve Jobs, because he did push people to be better. And if I could have something around that on my tombstone, that I was able to help my family be better and other people be better, I think that is something that I would be okay with once I left.
That's great. Yeah, it's a good aspiration to be really being there to help people and help them become the best that they want to be, and really helping them on that path that they choose. And it's a big part of coaching and somewhat mentoring as well. So, and I definitely see that in you from what I know. So that's great.
Thank you.
Well, that's great. Thanks so much, Steven. It's great to get to know you a little bit better, and I loved having you on the show. So thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to Unlocking Momentum. If today's conversation sparked ideas or gave you a new way to think about leadership, check out our past episodes and resources. Don't forget to follow and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you'd like to connect with me, Aaron Kopel, the Momentum Locksmith, you'll find the link in the show notes.